Hello and blessings to you, my friends. Welcome to this week's Bible study from Holy Trinity Parish, in which we'll be looking at the Sunday Gospel, 9th chapter of John, verses 1 to 41, Jesus healing the man blind from birth. In my Wednesday night Bible studies at the parish, we often use Christian art to help draw further meaning and offer further reflection for people who participate. We hope that you'll find this helpful as well. If you wish to dwell on any of the images at any length, you can obviously pause the video, look into it a little bit more deeply, and take your own time with it. I thought we'd begin with a couple of images. First, by the Danish painter Karl Heinrich Bloch. And what do you notice in this realistic view of the event of Jesus' encounter with the man born blind? When an artist engages in realism, we can easily place ourselves into the image that we see. Would we be one of the onlookers from above, one of the children peeking from behind the robe of an onlooker, perhaps one of the Pharisees, skeptical, in doubt, in wondering about who is this man? Or would we be the blind man, in need of something from Jesus? Sometimes art focuses on the singular experience or moment. So when you see this painting, what do you notice here? One thing I noticed was the focus on the man blind from birth. Jesus, just a sidelight in this painting, but the focus is on the man in his story. When you look at an Orthodox icon, don't think of it as a photograph or a selfie. Icons are intended to convey a theological meaning. So here we see Jesus healing the man and then the man going to wash. So what do you notice in this icon? In an icon, various things might attract your attention. The posture of the Lord or the man, the onlookers from the upper left, the pool being shaped like a baptismal font, or the city in the background. All of these serve to help draw the viewer in deeper and to inspire theological and religious reflection. Let's get to our text. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him. We have to do the works of the one who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." The ancients struggled with the cause of infirmities. Now, adults were easy to blame. A person did something wrong, and there were consequences to that. But with children and infants, who is there to blame? Hence the emphasis in John the Evangelist's story of a person being blind from birth. As we read here, Jesus rejects the idea of sin being inherited, being passed on from parents to children. The Christian view might be that sickness, infirmity, or injury is more of an opportunity. Jesus suggests that God's grace, God's working through us, might be made visible through first an illness and then an experience, if not of healing, of recovery, insight, and illumination into our lives. Orthodox Christians have a marvelous image of Christ. They refer to him as Pantocrator, and that's best described as Jesus, ruler of the universe. Jesus is ultimately the governor of all things in the natural world. This depiction of an icon with Jesus holding a book and the passage, "I am the light of the world." This is something important for us to reflect upon. So as you see the face of Jesus, his posture, his book, his expression, his gesture, what do you notice? An icon isn't intended to be a snapshot moment, but a place where we can encounter the Lord Jesus in this instance and engage in some reflection. The gold background, the traditional ICXC in the upper left and right corners. This is a depiction of Christ who is victorious, victorious over all of the illnesses, ailments, and infirmities that we mortal beings suffer. Turning back to the gospel, remember St. John is portraying Jesus as being the one who is in absolute control, one who is here for us and who is on our side. When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva, and smeared the clay on his eyes, and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed, and came back able to see. So far, we have a simple story of Jesus healing through a miracle, but there's more to come. I thought some of you might be interested in what the Pool of Siloam looks like today. Here it is in East Jerusalem. Another view with tourists instead of people seeking healing. And an interesting map from biblicalarchaeology.org which shows the source of the Siloam pool in the Gihon Spring, about 1,000 feet or more of tunnel underneath the ancient city of David, and the Siloam pool between the inner city wall and the outer city wall. Let's return to the gospel text. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is." But others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." So they said to him, "How were your eyes opened?" He replied, "The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went there and washed and was able to see." And they said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." Let's sum up what we know so far in this passage. The man knows that a person named Jesus healed him, but he doesn't know where he is. John's gospel is full of situations of misunderstanding and people not knowing. Remember Jesus' dialogue with one of his disciples at the Last Supper. "Where I am going, you know the way," and the disciple protesting, "We don't know the way." How often is it in the spiritual life that we know Jesus and we want to follow him, but we don't feel as if we know the way? In this way, St. John is really helping to draw us into a recognition in our own lives that is true of so many Christians, that we want desperately to follow Jesus and to be faithful to him, but we aren't sure how to do it. They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see." Let's take a few minutes to pause and to observe a few more paintings. As you look at this work by an unknown Cameroonian artist, what do you notice? In contrast to an icon, this painting shows what to an African would be a realistic picture of what happened. Is Jesus about to cure the man? Has he just released his hand from his eyes? At what point in the story does this image take place? Here we have a modern icon with some, but not many, traditional elements, but still a depiction of the healing moment. What do you notice here? So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him, since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." Now the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and gained his sight until they summoned the parents of the one who had gained his sight. They asked them, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How does he now see?" His parents answered and said, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees now, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He can speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone acknowledged him as the Christ, he would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason, his parents said, "He is of age. Question him." The man blind from birth is exhibiting some growth in his own spiritual life. First, he acknowledges the man who healed him by name as Jesus, and in his confrontation with the Pharisees, he acknowledges him as a prophet. The same thing happened with the Samaritan woman at the well last week. She began her acknowledgement of Jesus as a Jew, then he was a prophet, and ultimately he was recognized as Savior of the world. How much is this true in our own spiritual lives? We have a casual understanding of Jesus, but as we grow closer to him and develop in our prayer life, we find new insights and a willingness to ascribe to the Lord greater and greater role in our own lives. The Pharisees do not like any of this. They do not like Jesus. In this painting by the French painter James Tissot, what do you notice? So a second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied, "If he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is that I was blind and now I see." So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" A few comments here. The expression "give God the praise" is an oath, something similar to "I solemnly swear." And then notice "who knows" in this passage. The Pharisees, "we know," and the man born blind says, "I know." So he's coming to a deeper knowledge and a deeper understanding of the situation and his relationship with the Lord. He answered them, "I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" They ridiculed him and said, "You are that man's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we do not know where this one is from." The man answered and said to them, "This is what is so amazing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to him. It is unheard of that anyone ever opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything." They answered and said to him, "You were born totally in sin, and are you trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out. Now in this passage, notice that the man blind from birth uses the Pharisees' expression, "we know." So we also see a degree of sarcasm in this as well. It comes through pretty clearly, and what makes this such a deliciously dramatic passage. Let's continue on to the end. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him. The one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe, Lord." And he worshipped him. Then Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do see might become blind." Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not also blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin, but now you are saying, 'We see,' so your sin remains." Two final comments here. First, Jesus seeking out the man blind from birth. After the Pharisees expel him from their precinct, Jesus seeks him out and engages in that intimate conversation with him, drawing more and more faith out of the man until he is ready to make his declaration of belief in him and his worship. And this is very much like the image of God in some places in the Old Testament. You can look at how wisdom is personified as a lady who seeks out the righteous and the just. Proverbs chapters 8 and 9 exhibit this, but also a few verses from Psalm 139. The psalmist asks, "Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely darkness shall cover me, and light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you." So the scriptures remind us that God will seek us and will find us. And if we are prepared for that, unlike the Pharisees, we will be able to have that conversation and engage the Lord in a friendly and intimate way. And a second comment on this text. Remember in those last words of Jesus, he said, "I have come for judgment." And this brings us back to that image of the Pantocrator from earlier in our Bible study. Jesus as judge of the universe, the one who yields authority over all. With this final image depicting many elements of the 9th chapter of John's Gospel, what do you notice here? What part of the story of the man born blind stood out for you and had the most meaning for you? My friends, thank you so much for your patience in viewing and listening to this Bible study in the 9th chapter of John's Gospel. I wish you all the best in God's blessings, especially peace and healing.